Hi, everybody. It's Mrs. Wilson here, and I am ready to read to you Chapter 6 from Dr. Nicholas is Ridiculous. And Chapter 6 starts here. You probably have the PDF version with Chapter 6 that says, Our Second History Lesson. My name is AJ, and I love history. History is cool. I had no idea that you could learn about history of the toilet bowl and stuff. The next day, right after we finished pledging the allegiance, Dr. Nicholas came into our classroom again. It's time for another history lesson, said Miss Granite. Yay! Shouted all the boys. Boo! Shouted all the girls. Mr. Granite went to the teacher's lounge and said he'd be back in half an hour. What are we going to learn about today? I asked Dr. Nicholas. The history of the urinal? Can we learn about the history of snot? Asked Michael. I've always wondered where it came from. It comes from your nose, dumbhead, said Neil, the nude kid. Oh, snap, said Ryan. Will you teach us about the history of farting? I asked. I bet that's really interesting. We also suggested that Dr. Nicholas teach us about the history of burping, maggots, snakes, and barf. You boys are gross, said Andrea. I don't think I like history anymore. Me neither, said Emily, who always agrees with everything Andrea says. That's too bad, said Dr. Nicholas, because today we're going to learn about the history of Barbie. What? Barbie? I didn't want to learn about the history of Barbie. Girls. I love Barbie, Andrea shouted, all excited. Ooh, me too, said Emily. Barbie has a history? Oh, yes, said Dr. Nicholas. Everything has a history. It all started in a California garage back in the 1940s. Me and the guys covered our ears and made humming noises so we would not have to hear about the history of Barbie. But it didn't work. I still heard every word. Back in those days, Ruth and Elliot Handler owned a company called Mattel that made picture frames, said Dr. Nicholas. Isn't Mattel a toy company? Asked Alexia. It wasn't back then, said Dr. Nicholas, but they used the extra scraps of wood they made to make doll furniture. Soon they discovered that they were making more money from the doll furniture than the picture frames, so they switched to making toys. Oh, that's interesting, said Andrea. Tell us more, said Emily. I thought I was going to die. Back then, Dr. Nicholas went on, most dolls were baby dolls, but Ruth and Elliot Handler went on a trip to Switzerland, and one day they saw an adult doll called Lily in a store. They brought one home for their daughter, and do you know what their daughter's nickname was? Dumbhead, ugly face, I guessed. You are so immature, Arlo, said Andrea. I bet their daughter's nickname was Barbie. That's right, said Dr. Nicholas. So in 1959, Ruth and Elliot decided to make the first Barbie doll. It was 11.5 inches tall, and it sold for $3. It became the most popular doll in the world. 2 years later, they came out with Barbie's boyfriend, Ken, and he was named after their son. Dr. Nicholas went on and talking about the history of Barbie. I thought the half an hour would never end. I kept looking at the clock and waiting for Mr. Granite to come back in from the teacher's lounge. Are Ruth and Elliot Handler still alive? Asked Andrea. No, said Dr. Nicholas. Ruth passed away in 2002 and Elliot died in 2011. But Barbie lives on. Mattel has sold more than 1 billion Barbie dolls, and every 3 seconds, another one is sold. History is interesting, said Little Miss Perfect. I hate history. Oh, I almost forgot, Dr. Nicholas said. After a few years, Elliot decided that he wanted a toy for boys. So he came up with the idea of real-looking little metal cars. And in 1968, Hot Wheels was born. What? The same people who invented Barbie also invented Hot Wheels? Tell us about the history of Hot Wheels, said Ryan. Yeah, shouted all the boys. Well, it started back in... Dr. Nicholas didn't get a chance to finish her sentence. But because Mr. Granite came back from the teacher's lounge, I'm afraid we were out of time. Dr. Nicholas said, we'll learn more about history tomorrow. Yay! Everybody shouted. I'm really glad we're learning all about history, said Andrea, but we need to prepare for the big test. Yeah, if we don't do better on the test next week, the school will be closed, said Alexia. Don't worry about that silly test, said Dr. Nicholas. It will be a piece of cake. More cake? Maybe they were going to give us a test with all the questions written in the icing of a cake. At Ryan's birthday party last year, there was a cake with a photo of Ryan's face on it. I got to eat Ryan's eyeball. It was cool. All that talk about cake was getting me hungry. That was good because it was time for lunch. Ooh, I can't wait to see what happens next. You know I like to read about cake. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't wait to hear the next chapter tomorrow. Bye, everybody!